Hello, and welcome back to Onion Creature Update. I'm Owen Carlson, and today's breaking news is that the Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase Series is good now? So 2020 has been a very interesting and unique year in terms of Nintendo's announcements. They didn't have any kind of E3 presence because E3 didn't exist, and they didn't have anything really to replace it with. So announcements have been pretty sparse, and when they have happened, they've largely just been posts on Twitter, like they announced Paper Mario the Origami King on Twitter, they announced Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and they announced Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamities. And so for third-party Nintendo announcements, they've kind of just been relegating them to these Nintendo Direct Minis, and they've definitely had a lot of missteps with these. And it's only really since September that they've managed to actually be worth watching and have anything really of note. Because we started out in July, and it was really bad timing because people were pretty desperate for a Nintendo Direct, myself included, because the rest of the year was completely uncharted. There was no known release dates, no known schedule or games that were being announced or released, so people were like, what is happening? The other console manufacturers, Xbox and Sony, they were announcing their new lineup of games for the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, but Nintendo's just kind of sitting there, not really doing anything. And so what they did is they announced this mini Direct, which is like, okay, could still be good. And then you see, it's a partner showcase. Okay, that's weird. That means it's only third-party games, no Nintendo first-party releases. And then you learn that it's 10 minutes long, and you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted. And judging by the dislike ratio on this first video, which is almost 50%, a lot of other people didn't want that either. And granted, there are some games that are a pretty big deal, like Shin Megami Tensei 5 is big for fans of that series, and JRPGs, of course. And they announced a DLC for Cadence of Hyrule, which is pretty cool. But other than that, there was nothing, and it was just this 10-minute video, and there was nothing else. So people were not super pleased, which is understandable. The Nintendo Direct Mini was kind of just seen as a joke. It's like, why'd you do this, guys? And so then that brings us to August, and in August, it was kind of a similar situation. There were a few high-profile titles like Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, which, fans of that series I'm sure will enjoy. And they announced a port of the Taiko no Tatsujin 3DS game, which has a story mode. So there were a small handful of things in that one, but even compared to the previous month, it was pretty lackluster. So that also got, close to 50% dislikes. People were raging on Twitter and in the YouTube comments, as they are known to do. And the Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase brand was again seen as a laughingstock. But next up in September, things actually did turn around, because the partner showcase they had was pretty substantial, actually. So first of all, they opened the showcase with the new Monster Hunter Rise game, which looks pretty cool, I guess. I'm not really into Monster Hunter personally, but it's a really big series, so having an all-new entry developed from the ground up for the Switch is definitely great, and I'm sure will excite many fans and sell very well. Yeah, and just a few other smaller games. I wouldn't say this was the most amazing partner showcase, but we also did have the phenomenal announcement of Ori and the Will of the Wisps coming to Switch that day. It was shadow dropped and just released just like that, and that was really impressive. It's a game designed for the Xbox One X, basically. They managed to pare it down to run on mobile hardware, which is really great. It even runs at 60 frames per second at 900p most of the time. And then on top of that, it's just a fantastic game. And then they also announced physical versions, so it was a reasonably big deal, I'd say. And this is where we see the dislikes. They're people are oh wait, I actually like this now. So don't have nearly as many dislikes, probably a few more than would be usual for a Nintendo Direct of this kind, but even still, people were clearly turning around on it. They see the value in this. I don't know, I guess Nintendo just was able to get enough development partners to bring stuff that was actually worthwhile, whereas before they weren't, because of the corona, I suppose, would be the reason. And that brings us to the best of all, which is, of course, this most recent October partner showcase, where we had some pretty great stuff, I'd say. Some pretty wonderful things. First off, we had Bravely Default 2, which is a pretty big deal game. I think the first one was very popular. Although I will say the visuals looked not that good. They didn't look very impressive. Maybe they'll improve it before release, or maybe that's just what it looks like, but I was not wowed by that. And then we had a few streaming announcements, which is really interesting, because we've had a few games which stream to the Switch, but they've all been Japan exclusive with, they had Resident Evil 7, and like the Assassin's Creed game or something. But those are Japan exclusive, I guess, because they have an infrastructure that's more prepared for something like that. But this is the first time we've gotten like a big announcement like that I'm aware of for a streaming game coming to Switch in the United States and other territories other than Japan. And that was Control, which is like, I don't know, it's some game. I don't really know much about it. You know, it was like designed for like the PlayStation 4 and Xbox and PC. And it's streaming to Switch, so that's cool. I don't really know how it performs. I don't personally plan to check it out, but I think it was very well received, so that's cool. And then the new Hitman 3 game is coming to Switch via streaming as well. And that game, like visually, obviously that doesn't look like it could run on the Switch, so it makes sense that they would opt for streaming. It'll be interesting to see how these are received by the people who enjoy them. These games aren't really something that appeal to me generally. There's obviously a huge audience for these titles, so it is good to have them on the Switch, even in this somewhat limited capacity. I'd say the biggest downside is you can't really take it out of your house when you're playing these streaming games, which is, you know, that's a big part of the appeal of the Switch, is its portability, so you're kind of losing that. In that case, you'd be like, why don't I just buy it on another platform? But obviously some people don't have other platforms. Yeah, you know, it's still cool, still interesting to see, and I'm sure there will be an audience for it in some capacity. I'll be definitely looking to see how that performs. I'll look at videos to see how that works, because I definitely love to see other games come to Switch via streaming that I'd be more interested in. And then we had another pretty big announcement. We got a new trailer for No More Heroes 3. That's a really highly anticipated title by a lot of people. And then we had the first two games, which I've heard are really great, being ported to the Switch. They're HD or whatever. That's cool. I think these were leaked a while ago, but still cool to see them officially released. They were shadow dropped today, so that's good. Then we had like a few other minor things, but the ones I want to focus on is we got a brand new trailer for Age of Calamity, the new Breath of the Wild prequel that's basically, it's a Hyrule Warriors game, but it's also a prequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is really awesome. That's a great idea. Really looking forward to that title. Looks like you can play as the Divine Beasts, which looks pretty awesome, I'd say. And it was really cool to just see new content for that game in a partner showcase, and it made it feel like more worthwhile that I was watching it. I was like, oh, get new info on Zelda. That's not really expected, but I'll take it. And then, of course, the biggest announcement of the year, Part-Time UFO, the wonderful, magnificent mobile game developed by HAL Laboratory, released in 2017. I reviewed it on my channel a long time ago. The review probably isn't very good by my current standards, but I reviewed it, and I thought it was pretty awesome. It's one of my favorite mobile games on the phone. It's just a lot of fun. It's very simple, but very enjoyable as well. And it's getting a Switch port, which released today. I've already played the first couple levels, and it's Part-Time UFO on the Switch. It's pretty fantastic. But the new additions are really exciting. We have co-op, which is super cool, and we have like new achievements, and like it looks like there's Kirby content in here. It's kind of crazy. There's a lot of cool stuff, and it looks like a reasonably enhanced version. I actually saw that Nintendo had uploaded a Part-Time UFO video before I watched the showcase. I was like, oh my god. And so I was definitely wondering whether or not they would be adding significant new content. It looks like they did, which I mean, that's pretty great. And it's priced at $9, which is $4 more than the original version, but I'm assuming the new content will probably justify the price. I haven't played through the game fully, of course. It just came out. But by the looks of it, the new content is definitely warrants the price increase. And yeah, this Nintendo Direct showcase, you see the dislike bar, it's pretty tiny in comparison to the other ones. And this is the final one. They clarified that this would be the final Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase for this year. So this is a pretty good note to end on, I say. Yeah. So yeah, I think Nintendo really has salvaged this brand. It's had a bit of a redemption arc. It started out as this really hated thing, and now it's just like this pleasant list of things that's coming, and you get a few decently exciting announcements sprinkled in there. I like them now. I like them a lot. It turned out pretty good. Those first two, still not very good, but the September and October ones, pretty fantastic overall. I think this kind of invites discussion of why these exist at all. My current hypothesis is that Nintendo had contracts with developers or something that they had to include them in a Nintendo Direct, and so this was their way of doing that, since Nintendo themselves didn't want to do Nintendo Directs just because they were unsure of release dates. That's why I'm assuming they've announced games via Twitter, is just because they want to be sure of their release schedule before they get them announced. It might have been difficult for them to hammer that down too long in advance, so that's probably why Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Paper Mario, and Hyrule Warriors were announced pretty close to their release. That's what I'm assuming. Just my theory. Of course, there could be other reasons, but that's what seems the most likely to me. I will say that I do hope that we do get a return to the traditional Nintendo Direct format. It's been over a year since the last proper Nintendo Direct. I'd really love to see those return, because they're my favorite form of Nintendo announcements. The Twitter ones, they're okay, I guess, but not nearly as exciting as Nintendo Directs, in my opinion. And I think we will see them return once we have, the world is a little more stable, maybe. They probably will come back in some capacity. Hopefully, we get a full one at some point next year. I'd like that. But in the meanwhile, I think the partner showcases did serve their purpose, and I wouldn't mind seeing one or two in the future at some point. Obviously, I still want the big Nintendo Directs, and I think the only big letdown I have is that I really wanted to see Doom Eternal at some point in one of these partner showcases. I've really been anticipating that title for Switch. I'm really curious to see how they managed to fit it onto the mobile hardware. But we didn't see it in any of them. That's too bad, but hopefully that releases at some other point. When the first partner showcase came out, I was like, oh, this is horrible. This is just the worst thing ever. But as they've gone on, I've slowly started to actually like them, and now I think they're pretty good. Pretty good now. Not the best, but it's pretty decent at least, that's good. That's an accomplishment. So yeah, I just wanted to discuss these series of videos, and of course Part-Time UFO. I'll probably review that again because it's pretty great. And apart from that, I think that's the duration of this topic. I think I've exhausted it all. I think I've talked about it more than enough. And so concludes this edition of Onion Creature Update. Thank you for watching this thing.